Good evening. Tonight's meeting is a public meeting of the Board of Education where we, as a representative body of our entire community, conduct the board's business in public. This is a policy committee meeting. Part of the public process is the allocation of time to hear from members of our community during public comments. This is an opportunity for community members to speak regarding items on the agenda, communications, and items on the agenda. Public comment is not a place to discuss specific students or employees, even if referenced in a positive manner. The following process is in place to provide a fair opportunity for each of our speakers. 30 minutes have been allotted for all in-person public comments. Please provide your name when you come to the podium. Each speaker has up to 3 minutes to speak. Let's see, the board meeting, this committee meeting is going to continue to be live streamed for viewing on the district's website. Electronic public viewing can be found at Board Docs by clicking the video button. With that being said, let's stand for, I have to call the meeting to order at 5:33 p.m. and let's stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so I do not believe there are any public speakers for public comment. Is that correct? Correct. Okay, so moving on. The first thing is we will approve the policy committee meetings from the December 1st, 2021 policy committee meeting. Does anybody have any changes to those minutes? None being heard, the minutes will stand as posted or as provided. Okay, so we have a full board of policies tonight to review. Lots, big stack. All right, so let's start. And also as a reminder to our community, starting with the last board meeting, we started the arduous task of implementing a procedure to follow along with the press releases to review all of our policies in a 5-year cycle to make sure that not only to incorporate new amendments to policies recommended by press, but also to make sure that the policies that as they're provided in our manual are actually reflective of what's going on in our buildings. So although an arduous process, one that we all feel very committed to continuing. Okay, so let's start with 220. And this is the powers and duties of the Board of Education.
Policy 220, policy powers of duties of the school board. The recommendation is to adopt press as updated. There were 2 specific additions that were called out in this policy as it relates to the superintendent. In terms of the Board of Education, is notifying, notifying the state superintendent of education promptly and in writing of the name of a licensed teacher who was convicted of a felony along with the conviction and the name of the location of the court where the conviction occurred. The second update that has been made is also notifying the Teachers Retirement System, TRS, of the State of Illinois Board of Trustees promptly and in writing when it learns that a teacher, as defined in the Illinois Pension Code, was convicted of a felony along with the conviction and the name and the location of the court where that conviction occurred and the case number assigned by the court to conviction. And so the recommendation is with those updates except press.
Except press. Okay.
Yes.
I guess I'm confused here. 220. Oh, this is why. Okay. Any discussion regarding these items? Beth? Anybody? Okay. Then let's take a vote on agreeing to accept the press recommendations. Athena? Yes. Yes. Okay, so this will, as with all recommendations to adopt the changes, they will be placed on the full board agenda for its first reading during the March 15th. I'm looking at Kathy for the shaking
Yes.
of the head. March 15th board meeting. I do feel like we're very narrow in here today. I'm like, it's just,
Very close.
it's like-
Yeah, and then it's a lot of, you
I
have
know,
a lot.
like we all have so
of
much paperwork.
papers,
Sorry, I'm crowding you, Beth. I apologize. Okay, so 230 is the next policy. It is the school district elections.
Yes, and so the school district election, this policy, we had some follow-up questions that we wanted to look at, specifically in the adoption of press, where it specifically states the canvass of votes is conducted by the election authority within 21 days after the election. After further investigation, it is state election law that the DuPage County Clerk is required by law to canvass votes within the 21 days. And so therefore, we ask that it move forward in terms of adoption of press recommendation and changes.
Any discussion? Not for me. Okay, then hearing none, a vote on moving forward 230. Athena?
Yes.
Beth? Yes. Me, yes. Next one is 2105.
2105, ethics.
Yep, ethics and gift ban.
And gift ban updates our statutory citation, and we actually recommend adopting as outlined in press.
Okay, yeah, so they were just legal reference updates?
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So no substantive changes to the policy?
Correct.
Great. Athena?
Yes.
Beth? Yes. Me? Yes. Next one, 2110, qualifications, term, and duties of board officers. All right.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
So the qualifications, terms, duties of board officers, the update qualifications of the duties of the board as outlined as president as well as secretary and vice president. We, in this particular updates, a couple of things that I want to just call attention to and note. It allows the board to meet remotely if the board president determines that it is necessary during a public health emergency. It also requires the president to notify the TRS through 5:30 if a teacher is convicted of a felony, as previously stated in the previous policy. It removes responsibility for election oversight. This is now being covered within the county. It adds an optional section regarding the recording secretary. And just also want to identify that within our current policy, the term of actual responsibilities of outline of officers in our current policy, it identifies that that is served members for a 1-year term. Press and press policy identifies that those officers are elected. The board elects the officers for a 2-year term. Those are the significant updates as it relates to press policy and what is currently seen in our policy.
You didn't mention that the secretary gets up to $500 in compensation. I don't think I've said a penny of that. So I do think we should have a discussion about this extension of the term of officers from 1 to 2 years. I'll just open it up to thoughts from you guys.
So this is
Our current policy reads 1-year term, and press is recommending that it goes to a 2-year term.
So just to be clear, so state law is that unless your policy reads 1 year, it is 2 years.
Oh, so we were 2 years and we just didn't know it?
We were, our policy, by policy, we are 1 year because we are more specific than state law. But state law says that the board terms for the board officers are 2 years.
the recommendation from the state.
Unless your board policy specifies differently.
I see the sentence, the statement.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess and maybe somebody who does know the state policy or state law, that doesn't mean that a officer cannot step down.
Correct.
Correct. or
Change their status.
change their status.
Right.
Right, I guess.
So if, for example, the board vice president chose to no longer serve as the board vice president, then the board would choose from amongst their other, and there's procedures there.
So what about in our scenario where we, the officers are currently finishing up their, no, wait, yeah, well, in a year, in April, we will have been finishing our 1-year term. Does that mean we start over, or do we finish?
So we'll have to check with our legal counsel on that. Typically, in those situations, it would not start until the next full term. So we may have to go with another piece
No,
here.
it would
I
be,
think that
it
was
would be
our question.
exactly the timing.
Right, yeah.
Because if this sat for 2 board meetings, then the new board members could be, oh, no, wait, it's not an
What
election
I-
year.
Yeah,
Got it.
exactly.
Got
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, I forgot, I thought it was,
Is that you would continue to reorganize this time?
That's right.
And then, yeah, it wouldn't go into effect until.
so we would do another single-year term.
Because the time in which
Exactly.
the current officers were elected, the policy that in place
Read 1 year.
identifies it being 1 year.
Right.
Correct. Okay. So then come April, we would do another single-year term of all officers. And then the following April, when new board members were sat, that would be the 2-year term of any officers voted upon. Yeah, I mean, I see ups and downs of it personally, but, I'm not opposed to it. You guys, thoughts?
Yeah, the 2-year provides consistency, which is nice, especially with the every other year election cycles for the board. The 1 year feels just as board members, right? The commitment just is a little bit different with 1 year than 2 when we decide to go into positions like this. But
Yeah.
I don't really have a strong opinion.
No.
I could go with 2 or
I don't
1.
know that I do either.
Yeah, I feel the same way.
So then I think the way we roll is with the press recommendation.
Yeah.
And I think that feels right. Since goodness knows the law said that too. And I don't know, the history of why the board had selected a 1-year term, but I'm not sure. So
Can I just ask a clarifying question? So when we reorganize in April as a board, if we change the policy to go in effect, it'll be in effect at that point in time, why would we not do a 2-year?
Wouldn't that be 2 years? Because this,
So this term, if I understand correctly, this term of the officers currently are fulfilling their 1 year. In April,
timing of
you
the board?
reorganize,
that's the
and if
question.
this
So-
policy goes into effect with 2 years, will that new organization, because what I heard was it's the board election, which is another full year. So
Yeah.
just
So
wanted to
we'll-
clarify that.
In between now and then, we will check with
Thank you.
our
Perfect.
legal
Timing.
counsel.
Thank
and-
you.
because that was
We're
confusing
coming
to
up
me as
close
well.
too, so when these are final approval, that date might have it changed too. The question is it effective next school year or now?
Right, great. Okay, so we'll hear back about that then.
So we're going to adopt it or recommend it be adopted. Okay, so that's, I'll vote yes on that one for 110.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. 120, board member development.
So with board member development, the updates that will be reflected in press policy that is not currently reflected is that it adds trauma-informed practices as a required topic for board members to be trained upon. And it clarifies where board member training logs must be kept. And so with those particular updates, we recommend the adoption as amended.
Any discussion? None for me?
No, none here.
None here.
Okay. Vote, Athena?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Me, yes. Moving on to 220, school board meeting procedure.
School board meeting procedures, we see that the actual adoption of this makes the policy consistent with press recommendation. It clarifies when a board must review closed session meeting minutes is really the significant, or not even significant, but the update that will be called out. And with that being said, we recommend adoption as amended.
So I'm sure Kathy will be able to tell me this, but we're already in compliance with this, right? Every 6 months or as soon after as possible. So we're pretty much doing it. We're caught up and reviewing those closed session minute meetings every board meeting, right?
We are.
As long as I remember to email them. Oh, Robert's Rules of Order. Okay. Any discussion, Athena, Beth?
I'm good.
None? None heard. Moving 220 to the board, first reading, yes? Yes. 260, uniform grievance procedure. All right, there's something.
So on this policy, there are just minor updates with no substantive changes, and it's just clarifying the investigation process and the decision and appeal process. So I would recommend the press update.
So did we look at this? Remind me, Luke, if you could, why we looked at this in December meeting as well.
Right, there were a press recommendation then. This is just, like I said, this is just a legal reference.
Okay.
And just a minor wording change.
Okay.
So there's no substantive changes on this one.
All right. Any discussion?
Nope.
Nope. Move it forward, Beth?
Yes.
Athena?
Yes.
Me, yes. 340, superintendent.
With Superintendent 340 policy, it adds a special requirement for the superintendent in really reporting the educator misconduct cases. Also with it also outlines the specifics is included in ours. There is a sentence that says that the superintendent has sat on the board, has a seat on the Board of Education with the right to speak and advise on all matters before the board, but not to vote. Board members are elected by our community, and superintendents are appointed by the board. So therefore, the vote of a superintendent is not in alignment with that position.
So we're basically adopting what the press policy on this is.
Correct. And just to specify, it says the update in order to recommend the adoption as amended, it adds that including the special reporting responsibilities in policy 590, abuse and neglected child reporting specifically.
Great.
Sorry for omitting that.
Yeah, no, okay. All right, any discussion? Nope. All right. Move to move forward. Beth?
Yes.
Athena?
Yes.
Courtney, yes. 350 is next, the administrative personnel other than the supervisor. This is Kevin.
Is it me? So there are just some updates here made regarding some school holidays that were added. And about compensation and benefits, about when those should be made each year, and just clarifies when those should be made and when evaluations have to be done by. So recommend adopting and amending a couple of things internally.
So why is the timeline on, when the recommendations regarding evaluations statement removed? Why are we? I know it's removed in the press, but how? mean, the statement that you're recommending, well, you're recommending the timeframes under evaluation. The superintendent shall evaluate all administrative personnel and make employment and salary recommendations to the board each year.
Yep.
These recommendations should be presented to the board in sufficient time to allow the board to consider contract renewal and non-renewable issues. So isn't that what happens? I mean, for all administrators and personnel on single-year contracts?
It is. And so I'm just looking at some of the footnotes here, which always help me out. So everything has to be done by state law by March 1st. And so that is, it is state law that all of those administrator contracts that are on one-year contracts have to be done by March 1st.
So we're taking the sentence out because we're relying on the state law that reads it,
Because we're adding that,
but we're not adding, right?
well, in the compensation and benefits.
Right, but that's what I mean. So we're adding in a statement on timeline under the compensation and benefits,
But taking it out.
but taking it out under evaluations. So I guess I'm confused as to why. And
What's the timeline right now for the evaluations?
Every
What's our
year.
practice? Every year,
Yeah,
but is it by
before the
1st?
March meeting, right, which is March
That the evaluation is done by the 1st, presented to the board by the 15th.
15th. Because contracts are by April 1st, right? Or isn't, like,
Notification has to be by
that's what it is. Notification has
By
to be,
March 15th.
right. So that's what I mean. So that's why it's the March 1st date, so that decisions about contract renewals can be made by March 15th.
I was
Notifications.
doing that, I mean, that is what press recommends, but I'm comfortable with doing what you would like to do,
They're recommending to take that sentence
to
out.
take that sentence out.
Well, I
That's-
don't know that they're recommending to take it out. I don't think they had it in there. Right? So,
Where did they move it? Like take it from evaluation and put it in under compensation and benefits?
no,
sense
they'll
to
list, they'll list what their changes are, and that's not,
Just so you realize that this policy, our policy has not been reviewed since 2015. So that's why you'll see some additional things that reflect press in our policy that aren't necessarily a change to this press issue. So this is part of the process that Courtney talked about with we're trying to bring our policies up to date as best we can. Just to add
yeah,
some
so I think that the issue here is that, I mean, our policy manual does not include all the footnotes that go into supporting the statements we're making. But when you look at the press policy, specifically that one section I'm talking about, evaluation, where they take out the sentence we have, the footnote attached to that is that the statutory deadline for evaluating principals and assistant principals depends on the contract is for 1 year or multiple years. The evaluations of individuals on a single-year contracts must take place annually by March 1st. So I don't feel comfortable removing it. I think because these detailed footnotes are not, and I understand to Kevin's point that it is repetitive, by state law it has to happen, but,
And it's in our contracts.
and it's in your contracts.
Yep.
However, policy is something for our community to have reference. You know, we frequently have community members asking where is the policy that supports this decision that we're making. So I think it's helpful to lay it out because since the footnotes are not included in our policy manual. But that's just my position. I mean, like my opinion about it. I don't really feel.
Can I just clarify though? I believe under evaluation, it's taken out because it is redundant and evaluation ties directly to the compensation and benefit paragraph. And the compensation and benefit paragraph actually states the March board meeting.
Okay,
So it was
so
not
there's a
stated
great
above.
question. Do you feel like that statement about the board will consider the recommendations no later than the March board meeting ties into all of these paragraphs?
So,
Like, do you think it's
yeah.
referring to evaluation, administrative work year, and compensation and benefits?
Yes.
yeah, a couple of things. So that in that paragraph, in that first paragraph under compensation and benefits, that second sentence where it reads the terms of an individual employment contract when in conflict with this policy will control. So all of our contracts say that we have to be evaluated by March 1st because that's by state law. So,
Makes reference to the contract.
right.
Right, which has the details.
But which the community doesn't see. Right, that's really where I'm trying to balance this, but I do feel comfortable if our interpretation is that this statement, the recommendations should be presented to the board no later than the March board meeting, ties into each of these sections of this policy. So, because then we are letting everyone know that it is going to be March 1st so that we can make a recommendation March 15th or whatever that March board meeting is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
Yes.
it's an umbrella.
Okay. All right, then I'm good. No more questions for me. So moving forward, yes, Beth? 350, yes?
Yes.
Me, yes. All right, 360, administrative responsibility of the building principal.
This is a Dr.
Dr.
Grenz.
Grenz.
Everyone, can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Thank you. This is a policy on our building principal responsibilities. It is just a legal and cross-reference update. It defines the responsibilities. It alludes to assistant principals as well. And it is, again, not a substantial change.
Nothing from me?
Nothing.
Athena? Beth? Nope. Okay. Move it to first reading, yes, Athena?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Me, yes. Okay. Scott, you get, that was a quick hot seat for Scott. Now it's
Thank
Chris-
you.
Now it's Chris's turn. It's my favorite section of the policy manual, section 4.
She said it. I heard it. I'll take the record. She said it.
Favorite one. I mean, we don't discuss it enough. I feel like we really should spend some more time. 420. Let's do it. Now, which policy is this, Chris? Could you remind me? I know, he's so uncomfortable. Section 4, policy 20, fund balance. Chris.
So,
Do you want
So,
some water first? Do you want a little hydration?
so what we did here was we tried to closely reflect what's in the press policy language update, and what this policy on fund balance does is it's trying to set. It talks about maintaining the district's ability to maintain levels of service and pay its obligations in a prompt manner in spite of unforeseen events or unexpected expenses. So it's trying to go for a minimum level of fund balance. So we decided, or we had discussed in the Finance Committee, that May 31st would be the best time period to focus on, because that is our low cash point in the year. That's before the June taxes come in. That is our low cash point. So we were focused on May 31st, and at May 31st, we use the cash basis of accounting. So it's the May 31st cash basis operating fund balances ratio to annual operating expenses ratio of no less than, and we put in here 10%. And the 10% number was, it's obviously subjective, what you think the minimum fund balance should be. And we were below 10% at May 31st from 2007 to 2012. And those were some really tight times for the district. We were going through budget cuts in those years. 2007, we had to do tax anticipation warrants, so borrow money in order to pay our bills in 2007. We got close again in 2011. So those were really tight times. We were below 10%. Then in 2013 and 14, we were kind of between 10 and 15%. And then after 2014, we were above 15%. So I guess the thought on 10% was those were really tough times when we were when it was no less than 10%. When we were less than 10%, those were budget cut and tight times. And so that is why we came up with the 10% number.
Well, I'll just start out by saying that this policy has been discussed. I've lost track of how many times. I have been very clear on my position on this. I do not think 10% is a significant enough number. I mean, and just hearing what you're saying right now kind of like reaffirms that in my mind again. Like those were lean and tough years. So I don't think we should ever leave ourselves in a position where that's an acceptable number. I think that especially like that has been said over and over again with all the unknowns and facilities projects coming up, I feel very strongly that should not be where we're at. No surprise, I'm sure, to anybody. I do think, as also we've said it in the last policy meeting, that we should have some parameters, that we should have a goal, right? And a range is in my opinion, which is what our policy currently reads, is a range. So that's where I fall on it. I'm gonna listen to my committee members on their position.
Yeah, I do question the 10% number just because I know there was a year, at least 1 year in that time span you were talking about, Chris, that we were at 10%, but still having to make some significant cuts. So that just seems that waiting till that point when it's at 10% would be a little risky in my mind. And I think we had a discussion at the last board meeting with some of our other financial advisors that agreed that we would like it to be a little bit higher. They would like it to see it be a little bit higher at the cash flow point as well. So I would prefer if it was a little bit higher than 10%, just for my own comfort level.
I also
just
recognize
my-
that we're spending money right now, right? And it's not any individual person in the cabinet's decision to spend that money. Ultimately, it's the board's decision where that money gets spent. So it's nobody's responsibility other than the board's. But I do feel like we are not being responsible to our community when we start to talk about 10% as where we're at. But I do think it should be reflective of where we're at, right? So currently, Chris, where are we at right now? So our 30 whatever million that we have in there now, that's about 20 what percent? 38 million, is that? I know you gave me a chart. $27%, which is what our current policy, I believe, it says not under 26%, right? Isn't that one?
The current policy was the audited numbers from June 30th.
Right,
June.
right.
So that's going to reflect a little bit of a different
Right,
fund balance
right,
than
because
the
of the
cash
new-
flow low point.
Yep.
So
And I know that we, based on the scope of, the increased scope on some of the facilities, we're going to drop down, right? So I do think it's important for us to adopt a policy that reflects where we really are at.
So yeah, I'm in agreement with a lot of what has already been said. For me, it comes down to how do we define, and I think this is where you get that different gradation of where people are at. How do we define adequate, the word adequate in the policy? And so we might be in a little bit different places, but I think we're generally in the same ballpark. What I'm hearing is, given the volatility in our current climate, because we're in a large referendum facilities project, we have staffing shortages that we deal with. And then we're just planning for the future. That 10% feels like it's too low of a number, especially when we start to talk about the financial environment being cost containment at 10%. So, you know, for me personally, that May 31st cash basis is a really important number. And even though there may be moments in the future when we drop below a range like 15 to 20%, which it looks like that might be what press recommended, that's okay if the board made those decisions, which right now we did. We decided to expand scope and to move forward with what we believe to be best for our kids in our community. So as long as we're working towards getting back to that 15, 20%, and that there's a plan, you know, in place, and the board is aware and the cabinet are aware when we're making financial decisions or recommendations to the board for decision making, that, you know, we have this target identified and that's what we're working towards. I think that'll be helpful moving forward, especially when we're making a vast array of decisions on a lot of different things. So I would agree with Courtney on the percentage. I'm open to the press recommendation of 15 to 20%, worded as is, but you know, moving away from 10%, going closer to 15 to 20%.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with the press recommendation of 15 to 20, knowing that that's our goal. And we, like you said, we might make decisions that bring us under, and we might be in positions that we're a little over so that we can make some other decisions. But I feel like that should be our target area.
I think it's important just to note that, just to clarify with you, Chris, that there's really no action items applied to this policy. So it's a target that we want to be mindful of, but it's not saying that at this point such and such needs to be done. Those are decisions that the board and administration can make together. So if a decision was made to use some of those funds and go below that target, that would be, you know, something that would be decided on by the team.
Yep.
But not that it's any certain things are in this policy. It's basically just giving us a target to be mindful of, to be at a place where we feel most comfortable from a fiscal standpoint.
So then are we comfortable adopting the press policy, and which is the 15 to 20%? Chris, statement, yeah. So basically what's here, just change it from 10% to 15%. And then, Chris, for the purposes of this policy, is that part of a footnote that you wanted included in?
I think you would just have to change the percentage to what you want it to be.
So, but the adding in of this.
The adding in that just defines the funds for the purpose of this policy.
And do you have any other thoughts on?
I
what
guess
we've
just
talked
when
about?
I just want to, when I was thinking about this percentage, you know, and I was thinking about what is the risk of us having too low of a percentage, you know, and with that I was worried like, oh, there could be something unforeseen, unexpected, you know, change in market, whatever. There's lots of reasons why you might need a minimum amount. And then I was thinking to myself, what is the risk of having too high of a percentage, you know? And I was thinking on that side, well, then what if, like you said, we go below that percentage threshold? You know, what does that mean? Now, as you said, the language talks about just seeks to maintain. But because, and I guess I say that because when I was thinking about this with the upcoming transfer, 2.4 million in March related to the purchase of the maintenance garage, and then in July the transfer for the additional scope that we are doing on the construction projects, I did think that we're going to go below 15% as we talked about. And so that was in my mind when, where do we want to be? But I'm comfortable if it's 15% and knowing that we're likely to be below that, and this is a target that we seek to maintain. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, I think that's the really important distinction. This is where we want to be, and this is where we will work to be. We understand that there will be times that we are under that. But those are decisions that the board knowingly votes on and moves forward with. So,
And that the community understands the decisions that were made, why they were made, and that's discussed, publicly so that everybody understands when we do go under why that happened and what we're thinking about when we're doing that. So
I really appreciate your thoughts around that. I want to make sure that we just echo that if there are any changes in board members, that they come to this policy with that same understanding is the only thing that I would just like to elevate, because the understanding is that this is a threshold and a goal that we seek to maintain, and that as a board we might make decisions that causes us to be below that, and that's something that, as a board, as a team of board members, that those decisions are made intentionally, but that does not necessarily mean that it drives to certain particular actions now to be taken due to this. And I appreciate, and I think Chris and I appreciate hearing that from you. I just think thinking about a policy that will be in place, how other board members come to this policy and interpret that, could potentially look different. And so, but I do appreciate your understanding of that and shared ownership that the board makes decisions as to how the finances are spent, and if there is a decision that causes us to be below that ratio or that threshold, then that's owned by the Board of Education. That's all I wanted to.
Yeah, that's great. I'll even go one step further to, and that'll be on us too, right? As the board members who continue, and how we build that team with new members over time is really important. And the other side is that, we're kind of living an example of this policy when it comes to the board decisions that were made, with our facility projects. Those were unforeseen events, which is by definition, and some unexpected expenses that came in at way higher rates than what we anticipated. So when we're talking about that level of oversight, I'm feeling like the language is comfortable. It builds in that flexibility so that you can accommodate for those two types of events and expenses. And it complements this kind of longer range idea of, when we talk to our consultant or our auditors around, what should fund balance look like and what is a healthy fund balance. I think this policy at 15 to 20% complements some of their advice they've been giving us when it comes to, you guys are doing great financially, and we wish you had a little bit more. And I think this speaks to that at 15 and 20%.
agreed. Okay, so then let's vote on whether we move this to first reading with it reflecting 15 to 20%, not 10%, in the language for our policy.
So that's the only thing that we're changing. We're
only thing
keeping
based
the
on what
paragraph in red.
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
just
Yeah,
to clarify.
change that
Perfect.
10% to 15 to 20%. That being said, yay or nay, Beth?
yes.
Athena?
Yes.
Yes for me as well. All right, next one, 450, and that is payment procedures. Mr. Welton.
It's just an update that we just agreed with the changes made through the press adjustment.
So
Go ahead, I was just gonna ask.
Yeah, go ahead, you go.
It's just really around, the addition of, this is kind of operational on-site financial procedures around petty cash or clubs, cafeteria, right? Having cash on hand and the funds that they need to operate, yeah?
Yes, we do. We have those.
Yeah, you already have them, so it's just the addition of the language.
Yes.
As recommended by press.
Yes.
Great.
Any other questions? Move forward to first reading. Beth?
Yes.
Athena?
Yes.
Yes, for me. 460, this one is purchases and contracts.
So on this, we had deleted an optional language, but had a question about it, and I think we should probably just leave the optional language related to the notwithstanding the above, the superintendent shall not commit to any single non-customary purchase or expenditure excluding personnel of greater than $10,000 without prior board approval. And the way we read this optional language is that this is something that's this 10,000 above 10,000, greater than 10,000 is an item that is not budgeted. That's the way we read it and have interpreted it in the past.
Not budgeted and hasn't been pre-approved at a prior board
Right.
meeting if it was an added expenditure.
So you're saying leave in the statement?
Leave it in, yes.
Okay, yeah, okay. That really was the heart of my questions about this. Because all I kept thinking was like, wait a second. So in the June budget, are you going to give us a line by line item of everything under 10,000 that you are spending? And Chris is like, yeah, so I mean, that's just crazy. So, okay, great. That's where, so then Kathy, are you clear on what, how to amend what our policy will look like?
So my understanding is, and the standards for purchasing and contracts, what is currently crossed out, notwithstanding the above, the superintendent,
Yep.
remains.
Correct.
Okay.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
Nope, I'm good with that. Move it to first reading. Athena?
Yes.
Beth?
Yes.
Me, yes. 480 is accounts and audits.
This is just a press update, and we are good with it.
Under inventories, right? Oh, there's a couple, yeah, all right.
And so how they're updating is how we're functioning in our,
That is correct.
okay, great. Okay.
Good.
First reading, Beth?
Yes.
First reading, Athena?
Yes.
Yes for me. 4110 is transportation. Chris loves talking about buses.
There was a footnote, number 9, that was deleted because we do not seek reimbursement for the
Transport,
transporting to
alternate locations, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So we are going to remove that.
9.
Is it already removed?
Currently, so I called it out, currently it's not in our policy, but I called it out for us, for as a team to review in case it was part of what we did. So currently
So
it's not in our
it's not
policy.
in the policy, and we're
Correct.
not going to add it. Got
Correct.
it. Got it. It works. It's called dumbing it down, and it's what I do best. Okay. Anything else on 110?
That's it.
Okay, a yes for me.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, moving to 120, food services.
The press just made a minor, few minor language changes. We're good with those.
Any discussion?
Nope.
No.
Moving forward, Beth?
Yes?
Athena?
Yes.
120, yes, for me as well. 150, facility management and building programs.
Okay, you're on a roll.
All right, there was a question about this,
Yeah.
this optional language. And the reason the optional language is removed is because the facility department does manage a lot of projects, say for flooring, for just a lot of projects. It would be just super cumbersome for him to bring this to the board for every time he's doing flooring and all these things for greater than 12,500. So
And these are things already approved in the budget.
he already approves them in the process related to summer capital and that sort of thing, yes.
Yeah, that made sense to me.
Right, so it's not, we're not saying that
Additional.
approval doesn't need to be obtained. It's saying, we're saying it's already been obtained.
In the budget.
Yep.
Yes. And we are fine with the rest of the updates in the press, that we are already doing all of the rest of these changes.
Okay.
So right now, the optional is not in our board policy, right? That's not how we function?
Correct.
Right.
That's-
Right. So, okay. Okay. Thank you for clarifying. Anything else?
No.
All right, 150, Athena?
Yeah.
Beth?
Yes.
Yes for me. 160.
Still looks so big.
Environmental quality of buildings and grounds.
Chris again.
Still a Chris.
Man, all of four is
Now you're
Chris.
talking environment.
Where's his friend Tom?
Yes, Todd reviewed this and this was his, this is the change that he had put, that he approved this.
So press was recommending within 500 feet? Restricted use pesticides will not be applied on or within 500 feet of school property during normal school hours.
So there's fun facts for you this evening that you will
Oh,
only learn
love a
here.
good fun
So the
fact.
Illinois Pesticide Act,
Okay.
which was updated last year,
Can't believe I missed that.
right? I know, it's really exciting. States that nobody can apply pesticides within 500 feet of school property during normal school hours. But we can't control what our neighbors do,
Okay.
Right.
but it's state law,
Okay.
and there's penalties associated with it.
So why are we taking it out then?
I-
guess I'll,
It feels like we're trying to focus on district property, right?
Yeah.
So before pesticides are used on district premises.
Yeah, so like we can only control
Our
what we
property.
can control on our property. Like we can't stop the park district from doing something if they control the property that's adjacent to us, or a neighbor who owns property right next to us from, doing that sort of thing.
Right.
And so
So Todd had
That
wanted
was his
to
concern.
reduce, he wanted to eliminate the words "or within 500 feet of," for the reasons that Kevin was pointing out. But Kevin is saying that we can't remove those words.
when we were preparing for today, we were like, what is that all about? And then we went and looked up this citation, and that is actually in the state law.
right, so we're going to keep it. Yeah. I mean,
So we're doing it to the best of
I-
our abilities
well,
as a district, but we
I-
can't
right.
control the.
I mean, I think our policy just dictates what we do.
That's
You're right.
exactly
We
it.
can't control
Yep.
the park district. We can't control our neighbors,
neighbors,
but we
yep.
should have a policy that reflects what the
The state
law
law
and
is.
is what is
Yep.
being done.
Correct.
So, all right, so we're going to put or within 500 feet of school property back in.
Okay,
And now you know about the Illinois Pesticide Act.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
I understand, I'm just gonna voice this. I understand the moot point of keeping 500 feet in because of taking 500 feet out. I understand that it's a moot point. That's the way I'm reading it, because we can't control the property 500 feet away from our property line.
Yeah.
Right.
And so putting it in
Right.
is kind of like, we don't have control over that.
Yeah.
So we would just focus.
Somebody else does.
Somebody else does. So we would focus on our district property. So I could go either way on this one. I understand that, we say 500 feet, but we don't control 500 feet outside of our property. So
I think he's saying we have to put the 500 feet in. Is that what you're saying?
I don't know if we do.
So it's in the Illinois Pesticide Act. So there are penalties for people who do that. So like hypothetically speaking, somebody who is allergic to those pesticides and has an allergic reaction could suffer a penalty because the neighbor next to the school, did that and wasn't supposed to.
So the
That's
question
that's
is
incumbent
the
upon the
district liable?
state to make those neighbors and anybody who's adjacent to a school property or
Yeah.
whatever, probably not us.
I think if you look at the footnote number 3, defines what normal school hours
Right,
means,
right.
Monday through Friday.
Yep. But it's not up to
Well, I don't think
us.
it has-
7
It's not up
a.m.
to us to make,
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
you
But
know,
having this language in here isn't making us liable for
no,
what they're doing or putting any of the responsibility on us.
no. But realistically,
Yeah.
the state who made the law is supposed to go to the neighbors of the school and say, hey, you can't fertilize during school hours, just so you know.
Well, again, that's outside, what the purpose, it's outside us and what this policy for. So, but if you're saying that the state is requiring us to keep in on or within 500 feet, then, we'll just leave it in, recognizing that it's not really
Within our control.
within our control. Right. Is that fair to say, Augustina? Yeah.
Sure.
No, you're like,
I don't have, yeah.
all
I
right.
can go
Any
either
other discussion?
No.
All right. 4160 first read, Beth?
Yes.
Athena?
Yes.
Me, yes. All right, 4165, new awareness and prevention of child sex abuse and grooming behaviors. So this is a new
it in.
policy.
Leave it in, yeah.
Oh, well, let's
Yes,
clarify
leave
that
it in.
for Kathy, right?
Yeah, leave
The
it in.
500 leave in.
Leave
right?
it in.
You got that, Kathy? Leaving the 500 feet in. Okay.
You got that, okay. Yep,
Sure.
So 4.16, right? 4165.
165,
Got it.
Yep, and this is a new policy.
Yep. So for 165, you will notice in several of the policies this evening, it updates the powers and duties of the superintendent and of the board to report educator misconduct, those sorts of things. And there were several board policies and laws. There were several laws that were passed in the legislature last year related to child sex abuse. And so this board policy comes out of that. A whole new section here about what we're required to do in terms of educating students, in terms of training district employees, in terms of providing information to parents and guardians in student handbooks, and making sure that written notice of class about instruction is provided 5 days ahead of things, which are already things that we do. It's consolidated all into one policy, but it's all here and for content and clarity's sake.
When you said update handbook, is it already updated or is that something that has to
No,
be done?
so in later on this year, we are we are in the process right now of reviewing all of our handbooks across the district. And so this will be included in that.
And is that under your umbrella of responsibility? Just asking.
Yep, exactly.
All right. Any discussion? Beth? Athena?
None.
None.
None being heard. Move it to first. Beth?
Yes.
Athena?
Yes.
Yes for me, 165. 170?
170 is safety, and they're just minor word changes by the press, and we are comfortable with all of them.
Very minor.
So Chris, there were some, I'm sure it's in here, there were some changes made this year when it came to like lockdown drills and notification of parents and opt-out. Is that in practice and not reflected in policy then? Or is it in the policy?
I see in the lockdown drill under number 4, under school safety drill plans, they added, they added the word lockdown, but then they added at the very end, or a parent guardian for exempting.
Okay.
Looks good. Looks pretty minor changes.
I'm good.
Me, I'm good with it.
Okay. 4170 for first, Beth?
Yes.
Athena?
Yeah.
Me, yes. 4175, convicted sex offender screening and notifications. Chris, this falls under you, but,
Standard.
yep, it does.
It does, I can
See, I see your signature right there.
An autograph.
Yeah, I guess it did.
Welton, I can tag team this with you.
Oh, please.
The biggest
yeah.
change is that the,
Because it relates to you.
yeah.
He has to do a background
The board of presidents shall ensure that the checks are, that these criminal background checks are completed for the superintendent is the biggest update and change. And once with that wording, we move that it be approved.
Yep. Approved.
Yes.
Good to me, good.
Sounds
Moving
good.
4175 forward.
Yes.
510, equal employment opportunity and minority recruitment.
So this one again is just minor language change, and there's no substantive changes within. There's also some footnote updating, so we would recommend the press update.
Nothing from me. Beth?
Nope.
Nothing for
Athena?
me.
Okay. That's being said, we'll move it forward. 520. Workplace harassment prohibited.
And 520 again is just minor language update and some deletions within the language under prohibited conduct. So nothing again substantive, just minor language changes.
So they took out the definition of harassment. Which is interesting
And
to
then
me.
they
But then they
Put it back
added a
out
different
Again, yeah.
under sexual
If you go
harassment.
down,
prohibited.
sexual
Right.
harassment. It
Yeah.
was probably redundant, or it was just in the wrong place.
Yeah.
Yeah, yep.
No questions for me.
Nope.
None for me. Move it forward. 520, yes?
Yes.
Yes. 530, hiring process and criteria.
Again, a 530, this is just a minor update clarifying language under the investigations heading. So there are no substantive changes as well. We would recommend the press update.
That's the same language that was added to a
Yep.
couple of other ones
Yep.
for reporting.
All right, so 530, move it forward, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. 550, updated language. Oh, I'm sorry, 550 is drug and alcohol-free workplace, e-cigarette, tobacco, and cannabis prohibition.
Yeah, so this one, I had a legal review and there's updated language and clarification of some of the headings. So we would recommend as presented the press update.
Okay, so legal reviewed this one? Is that what
Yes.
you said?
Yes.
Okay. So,
It added some awareness for employees and education. pieces.
Okay,
For employees.
all right. Any discussion?
No? Nope.
Okay. Move it forward, yes?
Yes. Yes.
All right. 590, abuse and neglected child reporting.
So in 590, again, this is just updated reporting and training information and a minor clarification of the role of the superintendent.
Which is the same that was added under a previous.
Correct.
Yep. That Kevin was speaking of. Okay.
Great. Move it forward, yes?
Yes. Yes.
5100,
So 5100, this is updated to include information regarding the Abused and Neglected Child Reporting Act. So that information was not previously in there, now it's included.
so press added it in recently as well, right?
Correct.
Okay, okay. Okay, great.
Yep. Yeah.
Move it forward, 100,
Yes.
yes. 120, employee ethics, conduct, and conflict of interest.
Yes, this one is also updated to include information regarding the ANCRA. So just as the previous policy, there's also new language on guidance on counselor gift ban that was included in the policy.
Any discussion?
No?
Move it forward, yes.
Yes. Yes.
125, personal technology and social media usage and conduct.
So on 5125, I talked to Mr. Gomez, and this was just a minor update under the usage and conduct section. So we would recommend the press update as presented.
Okay, move it forward, 125, yes.
Yes.
Okay, 150, personnel records.
So-
Legal look at this one as well.
Right, on 150, this was updated regarding inquiries of current and former staff. And I had legal also review this one as well.
Okay.
So they tweaked what press recommended, right?
Yes.
Okay.
About personnel files, correct?
About
Okay.
what, huh?
Personnel files. it looks
Yes.
like.
Yeah,
Yes,
files, right. Yep, okay. Move it forward, yes, 150?
Yes.
185, family and medical leave.
So this is just minor update in legislation that relates to FMLA. There's no substantive changes within the policy, but it's just updating the FMLA language.
So did FMLA add in the specific hour numbers and stuff like that?
Yes.
Okay. And we're just adopting what press says, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Yes.
185, yes?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, 200.
So on 5200.
Terms and conditions of
Yep.
employment and dismissal.
So this update allows for the compliance between legal requirements and any collective bargaining agreements that we have with units within our organization. So it's recognizing law and recognizing language within the CBAs.
Okay.
And so I noticed that you also reviewed this through legal.
Correct.
Have we discussed this with the teachers union? Do they, I mean, I'm seeing that's what legal is suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, these are always ongoing conversations.
Always, okay.
I meet regularly, weekly with the head of ETC
Okay.
and PSRP, so.
Great. Okay, questions, Athena?
No.
Okay, 200, yes?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. 210, new resignations?
As opposed to old resignation.
Yeah. Bringing back some of them.
And this is, I believe, new for our district, this policy, and we do recommend the press update. Again, what it is acknowledging as language on resignations, that's also referenced in our collective bargaining agreements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes on 210. Moving to 220.
Yeah, this is regarding substitute teachers, and there are no substantive changes in here. There was a deletion and a year update.
Okay. Okay. So again, this is just the press updates.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. 250. Leave of absences.
Yeah, so this is the press update on leave of absence qualifications, so what qualifies for a leave of absence. And we do recommend this as presented.
Luke, if you recall, this is something that legal had reviewed also and made changes.
Yeah, this was a legal reference.
Okay. And so we're not adopting the entire press policy, only those that are applicable to 205, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Got it. All right. Yes on 250.
Yes.
Yes.
On 260, student teachers.
So on 260, there's just a minor language clarification and deletion of language under assignment, and just a footnote update.
And again, adopting what press is recommending.
Correct.
Okay. Yes on 260.
Yes.
Yes.
330 is sick days, vacation, holidays, and leaves.
So on 5330, this is updating our policy per Illinois School Code 5246, allowing for the 30 days of paid sick leave for birth, adoption, placement for adoption, acceptance of a child in foster care. So that language is added in.
Great. Let's remember that one.
It also references language that is reflective in the collective bargaining agreement as
Great.
well.
Yeah. And I like how we include that.
Yeah.
In there. Discussion.
Nope.
I'm good.
330, yes.
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 615, Luke off the hot seat for a few, for a little bit. 615 is school accountability.
And it makes a minor non-substantive change, I think, to the legal references, so,
Okay.
yep.
I'm on the wrong one. sorry.
Discussion on 15.
No.
Move forward, yes.
Yes.
20 is school year and calendar day.
So this adds some cross-references to the other policy that Luke was talking about, the State Commemorative Dates Act. And I think that we started to review this
I
in
was just gonna say, I
December.
feel like we talked about this last time.
And we
Yeah.
had it at 177 days, and it was supposed to be 176.
Okay.
So we corrected
That was
that.
correct. Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
Further discussion?
No?
Yes on 20?
Yes.
Yes. 650, school wellness.
Yep, super fun. We get to have an unused food plan. So for leftover food in our cafeterias. And so Cheryl Spencer, who is our Director of Food Services, is currently working on that right now. It's required by state law. And it also, this update specifies that physical education must take place during the school day. Just for context, there are school districts across the state that don't have room during the day in their gyms to offer physical education during the day. And so like they had to extend their day. So like in other districts, they were only able to offer it 2 or 3 days a week unless they offered it after school. So
And there are exemptions to those policies as indicated in our own policy, correct?
for physical education?
Yes.
Yes. Yep. We're going to talk
And those
about
don't-
some of them later on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And those we'll discuss at a later moment.
Yep.
Although maybe we should discuss it now as in conduct. No, that's fine. Exemption. All right. Any further discussion?
No.
I do love the putting a plan together for unused food sharing. It's I'd like to, because I'm guessing that comes with collaboration with community members and organizations in our community. So I think that's a great idea. I'm looking forward to hearing about it.
Yep.
Yes on 50.
Yes. Yes.
60 is curriculum content.
That is Dr. Grenz.
Hi, everyone.
It's here.
Several updates in policy 660 this evening. The first of which relates to drug and substance abuse prevention, and it adds the specificity around opioid abuse, including and making sure that that is part of the prevention programming. There's also specifics added regarding reading of 60 minutes per day for students in grades K to 3. There is also additional information specified regarding, I guess what we would call child-directed play, recess, if you will, of 30 minutes daily, with a minimum of at least 15 consecutive minutes, if it will be provided in that manner, if it's divided, which sometimes is the case. There's a little bit of a date deletion. There are some specifics related to driver's ed, and specifying that that needs to be included, related to also including motorcycles, to the extent that they can be taught in the classroom. There's some another information here around how to handle emergency situations, highway construction and maintenance zones. It gets into specifics around traffic stops for law enforcement and walks through how to handle those as it relates to driver's ed. If you skip down, there is a mentioning to computer literacy skills. I'll talk a little bit more about that because it becomes more specific in a minute. Some of the previous items that existed around social studies have been specified and delineated out to include, a little bit more detail around Declaration of Independence, Constitution of the U.S., and the state of Illinois. And previously it used to be a little more vague, so they've added specifics there. There is a line here that's been added around evidence-informed sexual abuse and assault awareness prevention programming in all grades, making sure that exists. And then if you skip down to item 13, it starts to talk a little more here around what they are claiming and calling intensive instruction in computer literacy, which is new and can be embedded in English, social studies, or any other subject. The reason I'm mentioning that is 14 talks about media literacy as well, but this is something that school districts are now navigating and determining where and when should schools fit computer science. You'll see number 15 says that it's optional. It's optional until the fall of 2023. And at that point, we will need to identify, which is currently in development, a plan for students in grades 9 through 12 to have an opportunity to take at least one computer science course aligned to the Illinois Learning Standards in computer science. And it specifies what computer science can and should include. Many districts around in neighboring areas from us are embedding that in an English course. Some are looking at math, but most that I have collaborated with have embedded it into English programming. What that means is a particular unit might involve and embed computer science and computer literacy so that all students go through that program. That's why some are utilizing the English program or English literature, if you will. I imagine there may be some questions on that. Number 17 existed prior and adds on additional religious and ethnic affiliations as it relates to contributions to society. Number 19 is a little bit just more semantic. Number 20 again, semantic. 21 adds additional specificity to an existing item around Black history and the history of pre-enslavement of Black people from 3000 BCE to AD 1619. Talks a little bit there and adds in some specificity around civil rights renaissance as well. And then number 23 is another newer program or a newer, shall I say, addition here is around the fall. It says 2022, schools instruction determined by the superintendent shall address and include Asian American history, including the history of Asian Americans in Illinois and the Midwest, as well as the contributions of Asian Americans toward advancing civil rights from the 19th century onward, which must include contributions made by individual Asian Americans in government and the arts, humanities, and sciences, as well as contributions of Asian American communities to the economic, cultural, social, and political development of the U.S. So a lot in this policy. Many of it existed prior, just additional specifics in some spots, and then other areas, newer items.
I have one
Go ahead.
question.
No? If you only had one, I'd be surprised. Yeah, there's a lot
Shocking.
here.
I have a
so,
question about
yeah.
one.
so
Yeah.
much.
For number 14, if that computer literacy is going to be embedded into another class, will students receive credit for that?
On the transcript, it'll just show up more than likely as being in that English course.
Okay.
So a lot of those specifics as it relates to item 15 are really still in development in determining, what the state coding will be required of us when we, create that course sort of behind the scenes, if you will.
Right. So it's kind of embedded in, it might be embedded into another course, but then they would get credit for that.
Correct.
Count towards there.
So we would satisfy that requirement, and we would be able to, document and showcase
Right.
that our students, experience that when they go through course X, whatever that may be. And obviously we want to do it in a way that's, going to reflect the course and its design and, add value to it. And I think there are some real opportunities to do that. But we have a little bit of,
Absolutely.
time here, and the team's been working on it. I know there was an update on it today. They're looking at, and there has been requests for additional guidance as well from the Illinois State Board of Ed.
Great, thank you.
It does seem like 13, 14, and 15 all related to kind of computer literacy and media. It does seem like a very strong push at this point for it. And so I would imagine you'd need clarification on how to incorporate that with all the other requirements that our high schoolers are have to burden or carry or complete. So what you're saying, Scott, is these three, number 13, 14, and 15, would be incorporated within current
Possibly.
course offerings. Thank you.
Correct. That is likely the avenue that we will take, as has been the case with many of the neighboring high schools who've, determined how they're going to do that. Some have taken the initiative, and some have, requested a bit more information, in determining whether or not they'll have to change that based on, ISB's guidance when it arrives.
15 may be an additional graduation requirement down the road. That computer literacy piece.
Right.
Well, 15 says
Well, that's
an
why I was asking
opportunity
about.
to take. So that doesn't sound like it would be a requirement.
Right. It could be later on, I think, is
Later,
what Kevin's
right.
saying. But
Right.
right now, they should have an opportunity, so there should be a set of curriculum available that they can choose to engage in.
So Scott, I'd ask on number 17, 21, 23. I know that it added you say that word.
Specificity?
More details.
Correct.
It's not changing the curriculum we currently have. Is that correct? Meaning this is what is being taught in these classes already, but this is just adding to the details of the policy?
It'll certainly provide more direction in certain areas, as well as accountability, to speak frankly. When you look at number 20, I think it's R23.
Yep.
These are recent codes and laws related that have been passed, and I'm toggling between two documents to make sure I'm on the correct number for ours.
23 is the events of Asian American.
20, yeah, thank you. That's the correct one. Thanks. It was 24 in another location. Sorry. That will provide additional guidance for us as it relates to, possible programs or initiatives that take place across schools. Oftentimes the library media centers will be central locations for things that, all students can interact with, in certain grade levels based on the way the school is designed and the way that the students may interact with that course. So it provides us with direction and, some steps to take to continue to improve our programming.
This is not new course offerings. This is ensuring that all students are receiving instruction in the current course offerings under these topics.
Correct.
Right, okay.
Yeah, the way
Correct.
I see it is it's an expansion. Like if you look at number 17, they list out all the different groups that are a part of the curriculum or highlighted through the curriculum. And this is clearly expanding the number of groups to include religious groups and, among some others. So, when we're talking about ideas, kind of like, big picture ideas where all students should see themselves in the curriculum, I think that's what Scott is getting at, is that it can show up in an English class. It can show up in a social studies class when we're learning about, world history. It can show up in a 5th grade text that they're using as a reading tool. So really a nod to creating more diversity in the curriculum and where all students can see themselves throughout their experience.
So I guess my only question was when Scott, well, not my only, but what you just said triggered something. Scott, when you said it'll also help in accountability and ensuring that all of these topics are reflected. How do we ensure that if it can show up in any course offering? I mean, how do we
That's
know?
That's a great question. So we'll oftentimes, not oftentimes, but we'll use the Illinois Learning Standards as we had mentioned a little bit at the February presentation. Those are really more or less the map in terms of the direction to take. And a lot of our, standards that align that will help us, deliver that. This provides us, when I say accountability, I mean a little bit more of a reference point to make sure that we are achieving the items that are listed here. Just as importantly as graduation requirements that we'll talk about in a minute, is making sure that we, as I think it was board member Arvanitas mentioned, that we accomplish all of the items that are listed in our policy, that we're constantly following through with what we say that we have in policy, and that we're cross-referencing that. So whenever a curriculum is reviewed, or materials are reviewed, oftentimes that will be filtered through this information as well to make sure that we are held accountable for ourselves to make sure that we're meeting the policies.
Mm-hmm. Great.
Can I make one more point just around like the literacy, media literacy, and, what that might look like just for the people at home who are watching a really fun policy committee meeting right now. What this can look like in schools. I want to be clear that it's not necessarily an addition of course options or additional curriculum. It's embedded within what we already teach. And when you think about media literacy and the importance of it today, I mean, we're living it, right? The need to have strong skills in identifying, valid sources and valid information, things like that. This might look like in a school, a partnership between, say, the media center or librarian with an elementary school teacher where students are working on a research project and they're going to learn about, how do you identify a credible source? Or it might look like in a high school where a librarian and a social studies teacher get together to teach these skills to students through the social studies curriculum. So these are in addition to, we're probably already doing a lot of this, I'd imagine, if we did an inventory of our current curriculum, but that, this kind of formalizes or allows more of a framework for staff to kind of follow and know where they should be going and what types of things they should be teaching.
I'm kind of surprised that it limits it just to the high school, quite frankly, because
It starts younger than that.
It does, right? It really does start younger than that, and I think those, to the best that we are able, it seems like if we can incorporate that into maybe 7th and 8th graders, so that they're prepared once they get to high school to learn how to find, fact-based reporting and evidence that they can use in their research. It certainly would seem like that is more logical.
We can I add value in there? I think so. If you're referring to the media piece, we absolutely do accomplish some of that in the younger grades with digital citizenship. There are a series of anchor points in the digital citizenship studies, or if you will, curriculum to call it that. It will accomplish research, identifying best practices, making sure it's a valid source, not quoting Wikipedia, things like that. So a lot of that does take place as well in the younger grades. It just may not be spelled out as clearly here in this particular policy.
Really good. Great. So if we can just go to that first paragraph, sorry about this. When we're adding in a statement about the reading opportunity of 60 minutes per day in kindergarten through 3rd grade, when our students are reading below their current grade level, where are we stealing that 60 minutes from out of the daily course of instruction?
That's a good question.
Let's see here. Reading opportunity 6 minutes per day with students in kindergarten. Who's reading?
But I don't think they do that at K through 5.
So we do have several reading intervention opportunities, and there may be even, it doesn't all have to look like, pull out, if you will, and thinking about a student being removed from the classroom, it's definitely not going to be the case in each one of those students' circumstances. So it might be an additional differentiated, lesson for a student in a different, shall I say, subject that involves, more reading extension opportunities. Or it might be, pull out based on that student's, needs, but it will look different across the board, and is more than likely already happening in certain spots. It just may not be as specific in the actual policy.
And it wouldn't necessarily have to be 60 minutes all at once. It could be throughout the day in different subjects.
Right.
Correct.
I just feel like our little days are so full and structured. I'm just wondering what opportunities they're, where it's going to be placed.
Yeah.
And kind of the same thing, at the middle school levels, they do have that acceleration window where kids, first period, or FLL, is that what they call, what's it?
FLL.
Correct.
Yeah, in middle school they call it FLL, that gives them that opportunity to focus on areas they might need. I just don't know. I was interested to hear about the K through 5.
Yeah, the way I would read this is if a student, so this is promoted for all students in kindergarten through 3rd grade whose reading levels are 1 grade level or more lower than their current grade level. So this is like an MTSS student interventions, they're already on our radar as students who need more support.
Right.
And this is probably what I hate to say it, already do,
Right.
but that this is just formalizing that tier 2 or 3 intervention
Interventions,
for those kids. So, we've probably already identified where they're reading at their grade level, of course, through Fountas and Pinellas or whatever we
Right.
call that. And are then providing either that push in or pull out depending on where the student is and what they need, right? It's kind of individualized to each learner.
Right. And it says promoted. It doesn't
Yeah.
say required.
That's right.
So, and so in all instances, we're really working as hard as we can to do that in all of those situations through all of our systems like Athena just talked about.
And are we really teaching a unit of cursive writing? Cursive instruction?
It is
Where are you
required by
reading?
Illinois state
Yeah.
law.
You are so
You,
in there.
you betcha. They got to sign the checks. They got to sign the checks, you know?
Clearly my kids
I put
were
yay
absent
by
from
mine.
one unit because.
Actually, I was in a third grade classroom today where the kids signed a poster for me and several of them practiced their handwriting.
That's awesome. I'm glad to hear that it's happening.
I'm so glad too.
One of my.
Yeah, and it is, it is incorporated. It's not obtrusive. And, I think that it's seamless, I guess is what I would say. It's not a total burden.
I'm glad to hear it. One of my children, there's
Big
only two, but
policy.
that one will go unnamed,
Yes.
may have received a thank you note in all cursive and asked me to translate it.
This is another language, Mom.
Foreign language.
Other language. Okay,
The way it works.
thank you. All right, I have nothing else on 60.
I'm good.
Yep, good. Yes, for moving 60 forward.
Yes.
120, education of children with disabilities.
So earlier this year, the state adopted a new rule which allows students who attend our transition program to attend their through their 22nd birthday, past their 22nd birthday. And so this board policy updates that and also just makes a minor language change. So recommend adopting.
Oh, so is that an ad? I'm sorry, I just missed what you said, that the 22-year-old student can stay for the remainder of the year if
Yeah,
they
so
want.
that's
That's a change.
That's the change. So they
Yeah.
used to leave, like,
Right.
if my birthday was on
On their
November
birthday.
4th, they left on November 4th.
Mm-hmm.
And so now they stay until the end of the school year.
That's nice.
Yeah, that's great.
It's nice
where-
transition with
Yeah,
everyone.
where are we doing that at the transition center? They were being
Mm-hmm.
asked to leave?
Well, not asked to leave,
So
that was just what was the
that's
program.
that's the law. That was the
Yeah,
law.
that's what I
And
mean.
so
So,
we,
wow, okay.
And so the law changed, and so now they stay until the end of the school year.
Awesome. I like
It
that.
is nice to
Yeah,
finish. the
very
school year
nice.
with your peers.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
good.
discussion on 120?
None for me.
Move.
Nope.
Yes with 120?
Yes.
Yes.
All right, 130, program for the gifted.
This is, again, additional information explained out regarding gifted programming. This is our REACH program. The prior language did not have as much specifics as it relates to this. The program does, the policy does allude to state funding for districts who qualify as it relates to gifted education. And there are qualifications in order to achieve that as it relates on need for districts, but it talks about making sure that the school board will monitor the program's performance and making sure it's accomplishing its goals and objectives, and making sure that eligibility is not conditioned upon race, religion, sex, disability, or any other factor. So it's a little more specific to what used to be there, but no major programmatic shifts for us based on this policy update.
So this is how we're implementing it in our district.
Yes, it's just described differently, right?
Correct.
Just more specifically.
And
Explain.
sorry, Beth.
Go ahead.
The meeting periodically, how often is that now? Is that on a biannual basis? Meeting periodically with the superintendent, does it need to determine or review the indicators data? Like how often are we reviewing, is the board reviewing this program right now?
We actually just reviewed it And by reviewed it, was engaged with our each parent group, and we had a director who led the charge on updating qualifying rubrics and appeal rubrics. There's been significant satisfaction expressed as a result of that, and that the new forms are much more clear, very transparent, and have allowed for some attention to areas that may not have been given as much attention, such as writing, and teachers and parents expressing that they wanted that to be also a potential contributing factor to a student's eligibility. So we've made some updates recently, and not massive in any sort of significance, but they've been enough that it's been definitely appreciated. So it has been reviewed, I guess you could say, rather recently.
I'm
When the
asking
board-
with the
when
school
did the board get
yeah, was there a
updated?
school
Oh,
board
sorry.
member in that, or
Yeah.
I know that there have been some really nice enhancements to the program. I'll call them enhancements rather than changes. But I guess my question, Scott, is past practice. It says the school board is going to monitor this program's performance by meeting periodically. So is that how do you envision that taking place? Is that a biannual thing? Is it annual? Like, what does periodically mean?
I think we'd have to define that and determine, what we feel would be, relevant and what,
Yeah.
and we definitely have data and evidence to help, with that conversation as well as goals for the program. So we can definitely discuss, what that frequency could look like.
Well, and I think it also can be an updated meeting, like, this is where, the REACH program is now, and this is where we want to go type thing. I think that would suffice in that policy definition. Yes.
Okay, yes.
All right, 130, anything else?
No.
Yes on 130?
Yes.
Yes. 260, complaints about curriculum, instructional materials, and programs.
So this was mentioned at the February 22nd Board of Education meeting. And this is more definition and provides a procedure and an exhibit to a pre-existing policy from 2011. It allows for any person, could be a parent, could be a student, could be a community member who has any sort of complaint or concern about curriculum or instructional material. They would contact the principal. The principal would provide them with the form. The form is an exhibit that allows for them to provide more detail about the complaint or the concern that they have. And then that allows for a principal to initiate a review of that form and contact the parent or guardian or student or community member about the request.
Can I make a comment? So, thanks, Scott. The beginning part of it, I just want to make a clarification for anyone who's listening again. Parents, guardians have the right to inspect any instructional material used as part of their child's educational curriculum pursuant to board policy, right? That's when we put things on display. We have syllabi and all these things that kind of highlight our curriculum. Then persons who believe that curriculum, instructional materials, or programs violate rights guaranteed by any law. That's a statement that we need to all understand, that it's not any complaint about the curriculum. It's a complaint that violates any child's rights guaranteed by any law or board policy. That those are the complaints that are filed by this form. Yeah, am I clear on that?
No, this form could be it allows for any person to state as precisely as possible a specific curriculum area, an instructional material, or a program that they object. Maybe a text, maybe it may be related to a certain content area. There could be a sensitivity in the family around an item.
Sorry,
There may be.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I think I called 135 out, and we're talking about 260.
No, I'm good. I
Okay.
missed it. Yeah, I made a mistake.
Okay.
So
Okay.
I read this, sorry, it's a lot to read. I'm reading this as that top part is about 715. It refers to student rights. Then we talk about 2260, which is uniform grievance. That's what I was referring to.
Okay.
That's policy 2260. And then Scott, I believe you're highlighting this policy, which is the curriculum objection form. And that is for any persons with all other suggestions or complaints
Right.
about curriculum, instructional materials, or programs should complete this form.
Right.
So we created, so this is a separate process. We have the uniform grievance, which is about
Right.
your rights being
Violated.
violated. And then we have the curriculum objection form, which is about complaints or suggestions about the curriculum or instructional materials. I got it. I'm sorry, that was on me. Yes. Yeah, I'm good on this. Anybody else?
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm good. So yes on 260.
Yes.
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 Read that one correctly.
So
There's just a few to read
It's like
this time.
information overload sometimes.
did everybody else? No? Okay.
Yeah, I can only sympathize with you, Kia.
We removed
It's just like, okay, sorry.
Okay, that's fine. All right, next one, 300.
Yep.
So 6300 graduation requirements. If you recall in the summer of, I think it was 2021, July, we had updated some of the language in this to make it more relevant and direct and specific to our programming names at York. You know, it had some ambiguous language that was used in, just sort of state general language. So it already had some, sort of updates as it relates to the July piece. Right now, it really is just a deletion of a code per press. So nothing content or programmatic that has any implication in it whatsoever from the changes.
Thank you.
Anything on 300?
No.
Yes on 300?
Yes.
Yes. 320, high school credit for proficiency.
This is a deletion of reference to there's an optional section in this policy that allows for districts to talk about proficiency exams, and there was an outdated reference to a computer literacy proficiency test that is being removed.
Definitely outdated
I
when
was
you're
just gonna
1-to-1 in kindergarten.
Right?
I don't have any comments.
No. Oh,
Thank
yes on 320?
Yes.
Yes. And 340, student testing and assessment program.
Again, this has another deletion of an item regarding test results being recorded in a student's temporary school record per press. It does still maintain a reference to policy 7340 that talks about student records. So it's not completely eliminating that. It's just eliminating a reference point to a temporary student record.
No comment.
Yes on 340?
Yes. Yes.
Yes. 710?
I believe 710 is just legal and a cross-reference update on equal education opportunities.
Yep, so no
very
changes in the
minor.
policy.
All good.
Yes on 10?
Yes.
Yep.
20?
20 adds some cross references to a new policy, updates some policy citations, and all of the other changes are non-substantive. So
Say that sentence again. I'm sorry, Kevin.
So it just makes some really non-substantive changes. It adds a cross-reference to a new policy that you all are recommending this evening and recommend adopting tonight.
Okay.
I don't have anything on this one.
Anything on 20?
Nope.
Yes for 20?
Yes.
30 is student assignment and intra-district transfer.
There is an added requirement here per school code in which it discusses school attendance areas, stating that they be periodically revised if necessary to prevent or eliminate segregation by color, race, or nationality. They use the phrase unit, and when they say unit, they're referring to an attendance area. The other items included here are a little bit of just semantic organization around class assignments being assigned to students.
So I don't, I feel very confused about this.
It should say periodically, not annually.
For number 2, you're saying?
You don't want to adopt boundaries annually.
No.
I
You
mean-
want to continue to do it periodically. That's all that's required.
Review them periodically. I'm fine with that. I'm talking about, I think number 2 is a little bit more confusing to me.
Yeah, that's
So
what the new units using a lens. Create new units.
what do you mean, like like school of attendance? What are we
A
talking about?
unit is an attendance area. The law uses unit for attendance area, so you could read it as create new attendance areas using a lens that considers preventing segregation and elimination of separating students in districts, schools because of color, race, nationality.
I got it.
So if we determined that all of our students of color attended one school, for example, and it was violating a federal law, then we would potentially have to look at drawing new district boundaries, new school boundaries, so that that didn't happen.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Anything on 30? Yes on 30?
Yes, I'm fine.
Yes on 30. Next one, 50, is school admissions and school student transfers to and from non-district schools.
Some highlights in this include elimination of a deadline for possible foreign student interest in applying. There's also some definition of visa details. We seem to believe that an F1 visa is for a student who has shown proof of funding, whereas the J1 is for a student supported substantially from an organization such as like a school sponsor or potentially a provider. So there's a little bit more detail there. We did talk to neighboring districts and have looked at several other policies in several other districts that reflect this addition, and think that it can be recommended to adopt at this time.
So can you clarify for me, Scott, the press recommendation is to add F1 visas as an opportunity? Or,
The press is recommending the section there around the F1 visa.
okay, so as a school right now, so here's how I look at F1 visas and J1 visas. J1 is exactly what you said, organization, typically a random placement with a host in our community, no prior connection, right? And the school then accepts or denies a student applicant based on whatever criteria you may have. The F1 visa is a little bit more of the private exchange. It's like my niece from Greece is going to come live with me and then go to school at York. And so I think the question for the board is, we're a public school and we aim to serve the students and children who live in our district. And schools who are highly sought after, given where we are just, globally, everything is becoming more global. There is a demand and a desire for people, for children or students to study abroad at younger ages. You see this trend happening in schools. I think there's great value to foreign exchange programs for both the host school and the student who's coming to visit. And I also want to balance protecting, our intended purpose of serving the students who live in our community. And I understand it sounded like Scott or whoever can answer this question about how many exchange students or foreign students do we accept a year? It sounded like it was not a large number, less than 2 maybe or something.
That's correct.
Not even.
That's
per year,
correct.
right?
And one other piece here is the board has to approve all of the foreign exchange students.
Oh.
Any foreign exchange student that comes in to the district has to be board approved. So we put
So
that.
it's not a designee? It's not a superintendent or designee board or approval?
So yeah, it's the board. So it goes through. You do it in your district, yeah. So so we put those through. So the way that it works here is that somebody applies at York High School. They submit the recommendation to us, and then we submit it to the board. And recognizing enrollment trends and if it's going to put somebody over a class limit and what time of year it is and all of that other stuff. And so it's been 2 or 3 every year except the COVID years.
Okay.
And just to add, underneath the F1 visa, the next statement does say the board has the ability to limit the number of exchange students.
Additionally, that the F1 visa, there's no ability to, those students are required to pay full tuition,
Okay,
full fees. That's required.
so it's like the
They
private acceptance.
must speak English. They can't, like, there's
Yeah.
all of these can'ts
Yeah.
required as a part of that.
Anything else?
Okay, covers it.
Yes on 50?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. 60 is residents. Chris, back to you.
Back to me. These are just minor changes that we are good with.
We are good with.
Just do it.
Okay.
Well-
No, yeah, so it just outlines kind of when their residence status changes and what qualifies for them to leave our district or stay, right?
Right.
Military service, it seems to be the focus for this one.
Kind of goes in hand with the one before this about non-resident student admission and how we handle that. And this is all practice, what we've been doing.
It is.
Okay. Yeah,
Wait, so
I'm good.
Yep.
You have a question?
Well, I just,
Oh, sorry.
that's okay. Non-resident students. Okay. We are not including all of the press recommendations, correct? I mean, we're not including the
203 from the
request for
last.
non-resident student admission and admission of non-resident students pursuant to an agreement or order.
Optional pieces.
Correct.
So then what is the paragraph that we're adding in that says request for non-resident student admissions?
I think they just added a title and deleted the when a student's change of residence is due to military. They reshuffled it looks like, and added a title.
But I don't think we're adding that part, right?
That's what I'm saying. I don't think we're adding that part, so why
We're
is it?
adding the part about military.
Right.
personnel.
But it looks like what we have, am I not reading this right? So the request for non.
Don't ask me, I didn't read
Well, I
the
mean,
last
this
one
whole
right.
Part, on the press version, you say no, but yet it's added in here. Right?
I don't
Under
see them
request for
press.
non-resident student admission.
See over here on the press
2, 3, 4.
version, it's an optional add-in for press, and you have indicated no, 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 but yet in the
There you are.
version that we are looking to adopt right now, it's added in.
I mean, you are just exceeding expectations.
So
This is
I'm
bar is
looking.
pretty low.
My brain is
you just-
fried
Are you?
right now.
I'm
I
looking
don't see
in
it.
the actual section
Where do you
In the
see it
policy,
in the policy.
do you have a non-resident students may attend district schools upon the approval of a request submitted by the student's parent, and then 4 bullets under it? No, right?
No,
That's what she's
That's the
saying,
part we're
so
taking out.
we need to take out the title that's there in blue.
I'm in the. I guess you're looking at paper where I'm looking in the board docs where it has the actual policy. Here.
Yeah, scroll down.
Yeah.
Do you have a touch screen?
No,
Oh, okay, scroll down, sorry.
there's nothing.
Wait, go down.
Right, that's what I'm
Nothing.
saying, Chris.
No,
This
you're
is
in
the
the-
this piece of
go
paper
there.
here that we're looking at is the proposed changes. And there's all this stuff included that I don't think should be here.
But I feel like I'm in the public document is the one We're-
Oh, you're
we're-
looking, okay.
doing.
Draft
I'm sorry.
version, right?
See that? And then it goes into paragraphs.
But when I
Here, in your press, it says optional no, and then there's the title. That's what she's referring to.
we don't put that in.
Scroll down, so you don't have a title on your.
Well, it's the title, but it says request for non-resident student admission, and it says students residing outside the district will not be allowed to attend district schools.
So this part here is different than,
Yeah,
it doesn't include those
It's-
bullets,
Yeah.
this part here.
it doesn't include it, right?
2010.
It sounds like they have it. So who, is that a press recommended, what you're reading, Chris? Is that?
Yeah, where does all this come from?
Yeah, where do those 5 or 6 paragraphs come from? I think is where we're a little lost.
So if I could beg your pardon.
Yes, please.
With making all these changes, when I'm looking at what our recommended policy is,
Uh-huh.
and looking at what press has, I'm not sure where the language under request for non-resident student admission is coming from, because it is not in the press recommendation.
Right.
So I'm going to have to go back and take a look at it. So,
Was it in our prior?
well, that I'd have to look at to see what our current policy, yeah, I don't have my computer open to
It
see
is
what our
actually in the
current,
press recommendation.
what was that?
Where
It
is
is
it?
in the press. I'm looking at it, press online, request for non-resident student admission,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's here, but,
but it's optional.
What we have, but
and
what we
Chris
have
has
in our
indicated that he
policy.
doesn't want it included, right? That's why I don't understand why it's here.
Yeah,
So let's pull this one.
Yeah, yeah.
Until
needs
we
a little
can
more
yeah, we
review,
need some clarification.
clarify and figure out what it should say. So we're gonna hold off on 760.
Wow, we went 3 pages deep before we had to hold off on one.
Yeah.
Okay, so,
All right, so 770, attendance and truancy.
So 770,
Yeah.
add specificity regarding children not required to attend public school because of religious reasons, and spells that out with a bit more detail. It also specifies that mental or behavioral health is a valid excuse or valid cause, I should say, sorry, for an absence. There is also the addition of a process and a mentioning of a process needing to be in place for use of chronic absentee data.
Do we use this process for the data, the absentee data?
We do look at chronic absentee data. We do have some procedures built out to address that as well. We have such dedicated principals, and we even have people who make home visits.
Great. All right, nothing else for me?
I
Anything?
don't have anything.
No, 70, yes?
Yes.
Beth, yes?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. 80 is release time for religious instruction observation.
This eliminates some specifics previously included that were pertaining to religious holidays and the mentioning of practice such as the distribution of a list of those holidays for a particular student. It eliminates that practice and that mentioning. And that seems to be the extent of this.
Any discussion on 80?
Nope.
Move it forward. 80, yes?
Yes.
Yes.
150, agency and police interviews.
So this one updates the word guidance. It removes the word guidance from guidance counselor. Now it just refers to them as counselors. And then removes a section that's outlined in the procedures for that policy. And so that you have them, I included the procedures for you on agency and police interviews. Because all of the section on, shall be present at each time an agency official or police officer interviews a student at school, all of that is included in the procedures, which were developed by the Illinois Council of School Attorneys in conjunction with school law enforcement and DuPage County State's Attorney and others.
So basically, what we had in the policy is now incorporated under 5ABC, just in a different format.
Correct.
Okay. I guess though it does leave out that last paragraph about removal from school.
Which paragraph are you referring to?
The, so we're taking out the,
Yeah, you wouldn't remove them from school. They can interview on site, but
So those are in the procedures. And
so when you say they're in the procedures, is that what this attachment of this
That's
document
exactly
is?
it.
Got
Yep.
it, got it. So the procedures we're referring to for everybody at home, guidelines for interviews of students at law by law enforcement authorities. So it was revised in September of 2020. Okay, so all of that is incorporated in those procedures. Got it. Anything else on 150?
not for me.
Good for 150, yes?
Yes.
Athena, yes?
Yes, sorry.
That's okay. 160, student appearance.
So this is an update to policy and language that are amended by what's called the Jett Hawkins Law. Some of the specificity here is that the district does not prohibit hairstyles historically associated with race, ethnicity, or hair textures, including but not limited to protective hairstyles such as braids, locks, and twists. I do want to also mention, I think we have a typo after health and safety. Students who disrupt the educational process or compromise standards of health and safety, I think that should be must modify their appearance instead of much. But this is a law. This was, I think, rather recent in terms of the added description and mentioning of the hairstyles. Some of the other language existed prior and has been updated.
And if we can just remove that option 1 part also, because that's what we're.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Good catch.
And so, again, I think you said this, didn't you, Scott, that it's complying with the Jett Hawkins law that's in place? Yes.
That's correct.
Great. Anything more? 160?
Can I just have a clarification? Scott, you said much versus must.
Must versus must.
Where is
My
that?
first sentence, last paragraph, students who disrupt the educational process or compromise standards of health and safety must modify their appearance.
We must change it.
Must.
Thank you.
Yes on 160?
Yes. Yes, I did want to say one thing about
Yeah.
it. I mean, it does to me feel a little archaic, and I understand the spirit of it is to not implement any, action or based on race, ethnicity, or hair texture. But I think it being spelled out like this does just that. It brings attention to the potentially racial difference or ethnic difference among kids. I personally don't feel like hairstyles such as braids, locks, and twists should be prohibited. And I know that's not what it's saying, but even the reference to it just makes me uncomfortable. It's archaic, and I'd rather talk about student appearance in general and talk about dress and hygiene than, go as far down and detailed as identifying hairstyles. I mean,
Does the recognition from ISBE require that we identify prohibited hairstyles
yes.
as far as?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because of the law.
For districts to receive recognition from the Illinois State Board of Education, they must provide assurances of compliance with Jett Hawkins law. And the second sentence does just that.
is there any other way that we can ensure compliance without having it written out in policy like this? I mean, we're
Not to my
doing
knowledge.
that. We're not doing the behavior. We're not, right? We're not
It's like 2 negatives.
sorry, I know. I'm trying to piece together what I'm trying to say after a very long day.
Well, so ISBE says we have to put in our policy that we're not allowing something to happen.
So just to back up a bigger picture here. So Jett Hawkins was this 4-year-old kid, and he was required to cut off his like braids
Yeah.
Yeah.
by school,
Totally
We
get
by
it.
school
understand.
policy.
Yeah.
And so, and his mother didn't think that was correct. And
And
so,
I agree with her.
and
Yeah.
so so now there's a law that prevents any school from saying that we are able to do that. Because those braids were deeply connected to his cultural identity and all of those other sorts of things. And so there are very specific things that have to be in our policy and in all of this as a part of school code.
Right, but are we required to say, put in our policy what we're not doing? We're not allowing students to do this, right? That's our policy. I mean, like, that's how
For me, it's about for me, it's just about that. Like if it's a student, if the student's appearance, including dress, grooming, hairstyles, or something like that, it just must not disrupt the educational learning environment, period. But I see the spin on this is that when we're referring to that specific case, we're talking about student protection, student rights, right? And I agree with the mom, and I feel like and I agree with the court case, and obviously would be mortified if that happened here. But I think just naming it in itself makes it feel isolated and singled out in a way that feels a little archaic to me.
So the only other way that press offers is actually an expansion. So
saw that.
is to put the district does not prohibit hairstyles or hair textures historically associated, and that's the other option there.
Yeah.
Historically associated with race, ethnicity, hair texture, or any other protected classes under Board Policy 710.
And those specifics are listed in the actual law. I just read it right now alongside the school code.
Say that again, Scott. So no specifics.
Those specific details
Oh,
that you're
those
referring
specific.
to.
I thought you said no specific. Those.
Sorry, those specific details are listed as well. So it is required of us.
Yeah, I feel like.
Can we get a legal perspective on that to see if it's required? I just don't think it's actually required.
Between now and the next time.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, I think, let us be clear, it's not that we disagree with the sentiment.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, is your position that by putting in our policy, we're highlighting it
Yeah.
and pulling, like pulling it out and,
Something about it doesn't sit well. It feels a bit, I guess the only way I could describe it is like feels a little old school. Like we're talking about hairstyles that we see all the time in our schools and our community and our kids. And I know that the intention is to say that that appearance is protected and acceptable. I think that's the spirit of the policy. And at the same time, it brings attention to a racial or ethnic group. You see what I'm saying? In a way that's different from everybody.
okay,
So-
We can seek counsel if you'd like. We
Yeah.
can seek additional counsel.
I'd like to, and here's what my kind of position on it is. If this policy is about student appearance, why are we talking about hairstyles? Like this is about hygiene, dress. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
And
about.
so your specific question, just to clarify, is around the braids, locks, and twists.
Yeah, if we can have a more general policy that encompasses student appearance in general and not have to isolate out braids, locks, and twists
Right, it seems like it should be the case for all
for all kids. Yeah. For all
hair
hairstyles.
textures.
or hair textures.
Right. Maybe we could just see some different options in how we can represent this and be within.
Yep. Dr. Grenz and I will
Legal.
work
okay,
on that.
so we'll,
Sorry to give you another one to look at.
we're on 7/160 and it's only the second one.
Yeah.
Not too bad. All right, so we'll pull 160 for further guidance from legal. Going to 7/180. which
Just to be
is-
clear, we will attempt to do that before the next board meeting.
Okay. Because it
that
needs to be
hopefully, yeah, because it needs to be approved certainly before the next handbook goes out.
Right.
Yeah,
And when's that? For next school year?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So,
definitely. Sure.
That's
Sounds
fine.
good.
So we won't hold it. We'll just
Right.
Well, we'll pull it from now, but and then we can
Add it in.
add it in if we get some direction and clarification.
Yeah, if the clarification stands as is, then we're moving it forward.
moving it forward.
If the clarification from legal is here's a couple options, then we're holding it for the next meeting or until we're able to review, right?
Yes.
Okay.
7180, prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment.
I just closed the wrong window, and so
6 bullets on this.
there are a whole bunch of additions here. A non-exhaustive list of bullying behaviors are added here. Also add some restorative measures for bullying related to categories protected by the Illinois Human Rights Act. It adds that counselor language that we talked about before, adds some specific language related to reprisal, makes changes to note how the board can note that it has reviewed this policy. So one of the things that you don't know or the community may not know is that we are required by law to update, or not update, but upload that we are in compliance with this law every year to the State Board of Education. And so there's always a question about like, how do we do that, and what have we updated and what is not updated, and then changes or updates some cross references.
Seems to be just a lot of clarifying language. Yeah, you want something?
No, I'm good.
Okay.
180, yes.
Yes. Yes.
190, student behavior.
So this, so we have for a while had a really specific code of conduct in our student discipline policy. And this makes it consistent with press. It makes some exceptions related to medical marijuana, which was approved a couple of board meetings ago. And then also removes some information about what happens when a student refuses to identify himself or herself. Takes out the word fighting, even though engaging in hazing or any kind of bullying or aggressive behavior that does physical. So it's really the same thing. We went back and forth on that. And then removes a couple of other things there. Talks about if transportation arrangements cannot be agreed upon, an alternative disciplinary measure must be used if we're using Saturday programs, and about in-school suspension, a couple of other things. This really brings us in line with Illinois School Code and what press has recommended for a long while.
The items that are taken out, are they incorporated in other areas? Like, you know, I mean, I just specifically was just looking at the one about under the disciplinary measures during in-school suspension, students are expected to study or work or perform work assigned by teachers. Is that incorporated somewhere else? I mean, what?
So in-school suspension is not included actually in the discipline policies because it wouldn't, that would be something that would be like included in the handbooks, which you guys will approve later on, because out-of-school suspensions are the things that would be included in here. So that would be sort of like adding a procedure in there about what actually gets to happen during in-school suspension.
That's more procedural than policy.
Exactly.
And it is an annual review, right? If I remember correctly,
An annual review of
policy of the
student discipline policy.
yes.
We do review this fairly often.
Okay. Yeah, and let's, I mean, the first footnote, and are we saying that in the first? Yeah, the first footnote does says the school boards along with the parent-teacher advisory committee must annually review their pupil discipline policies, implementation, and other factors related to school safety.
Which is that committee that we are putting together in April or May.
Great.
So there's not an opportunity for, or a designee, superintendent or designee? It has to be the school board?
It is a committee
School
of the
board.
board.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fun. More committees.
Yes.
Anything more on 190?
Chris is coming to that as well.
Yes.
All right.
190.
Approved. I mean, yes.
Yes.
Can I go back to 7160 because I did my own research and so what I was missing again, I'm sorry I had a long day, is that this is a fairly new lawsuit that was decided upon. And one of the impacts of it was that this be written into board policy. And again, under the spirit of protecting students' rights was kind of the sentiment behind that request, right? And so with that, given that, just what I just read on it, I'm okay
Okay.
with it because although I do in a lot of ways feel like it singles out groups, you know, or marginalized groups, I think the spirit of the law is to protect students' rights and I will never get in the way of that. So I'm okay with 7160 as stands and
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, Beth?
yes.
Okay. Yes, for 160.
Did you get that, Kathy? Sorry. Just want to make sure. Option one out, yeah.
And then much to must.
Yes.
So then we go to 200.
Yep.
Suspension procedures.
And you were just asking about what happens in in-school suspension, and it's listed right here.
Here.
And it just removes the first line, which talks about when it becomes effective.
Oh, so other than that, no changes?
And a minor change about a local mental health agency rather than the Department of Human Services. So
Okay. Yes on 200?
Yes.
Yes. 210. Expulsion procedures.
it's the same exact
Wow.
changes there. So suspension and expulsion procedures are
Hand in
separate. Yep.
hand.
Okay. Great.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yes on 210.
Yes.
Okay, yes.
240.
So there was a Supreme Court case, the Mahanoy Supreme Court case involving a cheerleader and extracurricular activities and conduct code. And so that is exactly what this is meant to update. We already have a conduct code. And so for extracurricular activities, and so we are working together to make sure that everything is updated and that it's consistent with that recent Supreme Court decision from 2021, which, if you did not read that Supreme Court decision or the background on that case, it is well worth your read.
And this optional part will be part of the policy, or no?
No, IHSA does not do a drug
Yeah.
and
They don't,
alcohol
yeah.
testing program.
Nope.
That's what I thought. Okay, just
I'm good.
clarifying. Okay, looks good to me.
240, yes.
Yes.
250, student support systems, services, sorry.
Yep, makes this policy specific to student support services, and adds some language about Aaron's Law, counseling, abuse, and assistance, and where that should be, so.
And when all these new policies, especially like the ones that we're talking about in this section, these will all be added to the handbooks?
That is exactly our plan, yes. Yeah. So there, one of the things that also comes with press is a handbook, it's not a model handbook, but a handbook checklist.
Okay.
And so we are regularly going through that.
So basically saying, okay, is this in there, is this in there?
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Great.
Yep.
All right.
Ask a question about the student handbook. Is that a printed form or online? Because I know sometimes things can change mid-school year. And
Yes, and it's both. And so what we are planning on doing is, for example, the most recent one that I can remember is a couple years back when they passed a law regarding like student safety and mental health mid-year. And so we sent a notice to all families mid-year saying this was the update. This will become effective on January 1st of that, school year, and it's now included in the student handbook, that sort of thing. So
Thank you.
Okay. Yes,
Yes.
250? Yes. Yes. 260, exemption from physical education.
see, I told you it would
one
come up
you
later.
knew.
Yep,
It's
exactly.
Can't wait, can't wait.
Yep, it allows students to be exempted from PE for religious and medical reasons, but requires a note of excusal. And so that is all laid out there for you.
So this really is not just a note, is really, that's all we need.
Yeah,
the
a
change.
doctor's note,
Yeah.
a doctor's
Yeah.
note or a person of the clergy,
The clerk.
a clergy,
Yep.
member of the clergy.
Let's see. Okay, all right. Yes on 260?
Yes.
Yes. 290.
Almost.
Don't start doing the happy dance yet.
290 is suicide and depression awareness and prevention.
Yeah. So this one adds specific groups of students. You can actually tell, so there are people in the legislature who have some really specific issues, and so this is one of them. So it adds specific groups of people who are at greater risk of suicide, and so adds that there, and requires us to do that. And the other big thing here that people will notice in the future is that on the backs of student IDs, that we are required to put information about this and put it in student planners. So
Yeah, so really that number 3 is just kind of giving, it's adding in specific categories of.
Yep. It's sort of like
Risk.
a list of people who really we should be watching more closely because they are certainly at risk.
Yep. Okay. good. Okay. 290, yes?
Yes.
Yes. 310,
This is a 5-year press review, so it updates some things, we don't
so this
often
is
see.
the restrictions on publications for elementary schools,
Correct. So it,
CD-ROMs.
Updates the language, obviously.
exactly,
Yes.
to digital files. I don't have it on my, Chris does, right?
definitely
On your
don't
computer,
have
do you
it
have a
on
CD-ROM? No, exactly.
I found one and my kids are like, what is that?
Yeah,
I'm like,
exactly.
"Oh."
Yes. So it just makes some of those updates as a part of a 5-year review and adds some other pieces there that needed to be updated. So
Okay, that's good. 310, yes?
Yes.
I'm guessing 315, same thing.
yep.
This is for the high school.
Yep, exactly.
looks
And
a
these
little
get a
more-
little bit more specific and obviously because high schools tend to have student newspapers and those sorts of things and deals with libel and obscenities and slander and what that should look like or not look like. And these were actually adopted as a part of the Student Press Law Center and in conjunction with them. So to my knowledge, we've not had issues with our student journalists or any challenges with that in recent memory. So
Is it a club or a part of a class here?
it is a part of a class.
Okay.
So
So much of this is already in the curriculum.
exactly. Yep.
Okay, yes on 315,
Yes.
Yes.
340, which is student records.
My favorite. So really any information either written or oral about student less than the age of 18 years old rather than 17 years old. So that just makes a minor change there. And just saying that we're going to comply with the state or federal law with regard to release of records here, including where applicable, a couple of other pieces without notice. In general, we have to provide notice and consent to parents if we're releasing records and get their permission to do so.
Yes on 340?
Yes.
345? Use of educational technology, student data privacy and security. I think we just looked at this one. I was just gonna say, I feel like we've seen this one
Yes.
before.
Right.
Approved.
Okay. Yes
Okay,
on
yes.
345
Yes.
and 870.
870 removes a section because people with disabilities never have to do one more step than anybody else and shouldn't have to. So you don't have to notify the superintendent or anybody else if they're going to be someplace.
And that's the only change?
That's the only change.
Great.
Yes on 870?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
All right, that comes to the end of all the policies we've reviewed tonight. Just as note, the only one we're pulling is 760, just to get some clarification on what the updates should be made. That being said, the upcoming meetings are March 8th, 2022, Finance and Operation Committee meeting at 5:30 at District 205 Center, rooms 215, 16, and 17, and March 15th, 2022, the regular Board of Education meeting at 7 p.m., District 205 Center, rooms 215, 16, and 17. Anything else?
No.
Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much for
Yes, thank you
everybody.
Really
for
good.
all the